So first of all, shalom to everyone. My name is David Sampson, and now that I have given you the books, I'm a famous author, and I thought that we would use this book as the basis for the texts today, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm going to continue with this subject throughout the month. The next 4 shiurim will all be focused on the concept of Ruach Hakodesh, prophecy, trying to analyze it, trying to see Rabbi Kook's take on prophecy, and how do we go from there. So first of all, before we begin, are there any questions regarding Ruach HaKodesh, prophecy, statements? Okay. Yes. So if that's the case, I'd like to begin on page 98. You know, it's always good to start with the end in mind. And 98, I have a quote of Rabbi Kook. And maybe I'll just begin with what I'm on 98, and it's the third paragraph on 98. Harav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook. You have it? Harav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Kook writes extensively on this subject. We're talking about Ruach HaKodesh and prophecy. In the following essay, he describes Ruach HaKodesh in its truncated form during the exile. He has a few different paragraphs where he talks about how you can't be true to yourself in Chutz La'aretz. There's one place where he writes about the imaginative faculty. And he says that a person's imagination is affected by where he lives. And that if a person lives in Chutz La'aretz, then his imagination is mitigated, and his ability to use his imagination for Ruach HaKodesh is immediately limited. And that you have to make aliyah to Eretz Yisrael to be a prophet. It's interesting. First of all, there's a famous expression of the Kuzari that all of the prophets prophesied ba uba'uvura, either in Eretz Yisrael or for the sake of Eretz Yisrael. And he actually wants to explain that the reason we left Egypt and we received the Torah in Mount Sinai is because the Sinai Peninsula is part of Israel, and God wanted to give us the Torah in Israel, in spite of the fact that it really doesn't seem that way from the straightforward texts of the Chumash. But he says that we couldn't receive the Torah in Egypt, and in Sinai we could. Maybe I'll just add, I used to be a tour guide, and I would do tours for yeshiva guys. And I had, I think it was BMT. I was in charge of tours for BMT, Olav Shalom. And I wanted to take the kids on a tour of the Sinai desert. And it was after the peace agreement with Egypt, and we had to get Egyptian visas. And I wanted to ask Rabbi Ram Shapiro whether or not it was kosher. Is that considered Israel? Is it not considered Israel? And then he said, up to Wadi El Arish, there's no question about it. If you want to go to the other side of the Sinai Peninsula from Wadi El Arish up to the Suez Canal, that's debatable. But he didn't say that it was debatable, but like a halachic psak that the Sinai Peninsula, even if it's not part of Israel and you need a visa from Egypt in order to get it, he thought that it was part of Eretz Yisrael. going back. So Rabbi Kook writes in a few different places how Eretz Yisrael impacts your imaginative faculty. And as soon as you make it Aliyah to Eretz Yisrael, he writes, the letters of your soul begin to be magnified. Just entering Eretz Yisrael magnifies the letters of your soul. Now, that's a deep Kabbalistic concept. I remember once I was sitting with Rav Tzvi Yehuda. I went to Merkaz Arav the first year when I went to Merkaz Arav. It was the year of the Yom Kippur War. And Elul was really great. And everybody was in the yeshiva. And then as soon as Yom Kippur came around, boom, everybody left. And as soon as everybody left, I felt kind of like deserted. And I was only 17. I wasn't the age of the army. And there were just a few of us in the yeshiva. And we went every night to Rav Kook at Rav Tzvi Yehuda, and we would learn Sefer Orot in his house during the year of the war. And at the time, I thought that it was like a consolation prize, that, well, I guess the whole yeshiva is not here. We're just a few kids, so we'll learn with Rav Kook. But now, in retrospect, I realized the wealth of the knowledge that we attained that year, learning personally with Rav Tzvi Yehuda, the Book of Orot, and explaining all of the concepts. So one of the things that you just don't really understand, what are letters of the soul? And then he explained it in a kind of scientific, palatable fashion. And he said, letters of the soul are the atoms of the soul. And that just like a body is broken down into atoms, so a soul is broken down into letters. And he said that they increase in magnitude as you approach a mitzvah. And when you come to Eretz Yisrael, they also increase. And this is what also allows your imaginative faculty to become pure. And that when you're not in Eretz Yisrael, you cannot have a pure imagination. It goes together with another understanding that God has 70 ministers for every one of the nations. There's 70 nations, and then there's a minister in heaven for each one of the nations. And he's got like a roly-poly hamburger eater for the minister of the United States, and he has a very proper one holding an umbrella for England, and he has someone with his nose a little up for France, and he's got his his 70 angels that are in charge of the 70 different nations. Now, when you worship Hashem anywhere outside of Israel, there's an interface, and you go through the angel of that country, and that you don't go straight to Hashem, and that's the way God is manifest. So your imagination also, it doesn't interface directly with Hashem. It has this interface with an angel who's in charge of that nation. So you can have an African like one of those scary masks and straw skirt ministers. And then when you start trying to imagine things, you're going to end up imagining all of these scary masks and straw skirts. And it's going to go through that, your whole imaginative faculty. Or you're going to think in the term of hamburgers when you're going to imagine things in the United States. And similarly, everywhere, you're going to have a little different thing. There's one place the Rambam writes, Chen hamakom al toshavav. The chen, how do you say chen? Charm. The charm of a place is recognized upon those who live there. And that every specific place has its own charm. And this charm is a result of the angelic angel, the celestial minister who's in charge of that part.
Is this a Kabbalistic concept, or where does this come from?
Where does it come from?
The idea of the 70 angels.
So it's alluded to in the Talmud, and it's actually there's a verse, and Kichelik Hashem Amo, Chevel Nachalato, and it says Eretz Asher Hinei Hashem Elokecha Ba Mirishit Hashana V'ad Achrit Hashana, and based on these verses, that Yatzev Gvulot Tamim LeMispar Bnei Yisrael, based on these verses, there are traditions that God has a different level of revelation here as opposed to outside of Eretz Yisrael. There's an interesting Gemara in Moed Katan, and Rav Chizda said that our rabbi who just passed away would have had prophecy if it wasn't for the fact that he was in Bavel and not in Eretz Yisrael. And then in the middle of the eulogy, his son asks him, and he says, but doesn't it say with Yecheskel that God appeared to him al Nahar Kvar, which is in Babylon? And he could have had prophecy. And then he says, Hayo Haya Dvar Hashem El Yecheskel. Hayo Haya is a double word. Like, what does it mean? Hayo Haya, it is was. And he explains that Yecheskel received prophecy in Bavel because he received prophecy in Eretz Yisrael previously. And it's based on that pasuk, and then there's this Talmudic expression, and then the Kuzari goes on to explain it, and it's in the Kabbalistic literature, it's definitely elaborated upon a lot. And the concept of the 70 nations. There's an interesting book of the grandfather of the Chida. His name was Rabbi Avraham Azulai, and he has a book called Chesed LaAvraham. It's interesting. He says like really weird things. That's one of the things he says. And at the beginning, he doesn't have proofs. He just says, "Da." Know that this is the case. Like that's the way he begins every paragraph.
That's the honest way of doing it, because he can make anything story up like that. So if a country splits, for example, the angels have to.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. Like there are like 150 nations in the United Nations. So like, how does it work? I guess that some of them are just the same. It could be that the United States and Canada just get one angel. I don't know. It's going to be very insulted, and they're going to want a little more maple syrup. I don't know how it works, but apparently, I think they're only 70. It's the same thing with the Jewish people. We have only 600,000 souls, and now there are more than 600,000 Jews. So what do you do if you have only 600,000 souls to go around? So some people say that redheads don't have souls, but that's still not enough.
You make it split. You fight against the other half of the country.
I guess it could cause it could be that some of the angels of heaven, the ministers, it could be that they're schizophrenic, and that's why there's a civil war going on.
The 600,000 is only managed every age, didn't include women and children.
That's very true. The 600,000 is a number which are men, but also Kabbalistically, there are 600,000 souls. That's it. That's as many as you get, 600,000 souls. And it's interesting, the Vilna Gaon wrote in his writings that when 600,000 people will come to Israel, that will be the critical mass for Geula. And in 1948, there were 600,000 people, men, women, and children. And it's interesting, during the 6-Day War, we reached a critical mass of 600,000 men. And that it could be that there's 2 stages, and that there's one stage of men, women, and children, and another stage of 600,000 men. But anyway, regarding how you divide 600,000 souls into 15 million, I guess we have to share, and we'll have to learn how to share souls. And it could be very upsetting, because it could be that there are people that are on one side of the reform who share a soul with people on the other side of the reform, and they're just going to have to learn to live together with that shared soul.
Don't we use in a serious way as poetry, not as fact?
What are you saying is poetry, in fact?
These statements.
Are they poetry or fact? Well, whenever you say, I'll tell you. First of all, I am a believer in Kabbalah. And Rabbi Kook, Rav Tzvi used to quote the Chatam Sofer, who said, anybody that openly negates the hidden Torah, you have to check if hiddenly he doesn't negate the open Torah. In Hebrew, it sounds better. And that Mishe benigle kofer benister, tzarich livdok im lo benister kofer benigle. And that, but let me explain. You see, I believe that the world that we perceive with our five senses is the tip of an iceberg, and that there is a metaphysical spiritual world that has rules, just like the physical world. And these metaphysical laws exist. So that I believe that when the Jewish people left Egypt, there were 600,000 men between the age of 20 and 60 that you could count. They were formed out of protoplasm. They existed in space and time, and you could see them. But I believe, together with this, not poetically, that there was a metaphysical counterpart for these 600,000 men, and they represented a metaphysical axiom that the Jewish people have 600,000 souls. They were manifest with these 600,000 men as they left Egypt. And this absolute axiom of 600,000 men, I believe in it. Yes, I believe that it's 100% truth. It's kind of like at this moment in this very room, we have millions and millions of internet sites of all kinds. And that if you just take a smartphone, you can access them. And it's obvious that they're here in the room right now, even though until you use a phone, you can't access anything. And I don't see anything. Looks like it's just empty air, but it's not. It's full of everything in the world is right here. And that as soon as you take a phone, it's here. And that it's the same with metaphysical truths, that even though they're not perceived, I believe 100% that they exist. So when I talk about 70 different angels of heaven, I believe that that is a metaphysical axiom of existence, and that when God created the world, he created it in metaphysical stages. Now, you don't necessarily have to recognize and know and deal with them. If you're a scientist who's working on a coronavirus. However, if you are a prophet who is trying to attain prophecy, and every time you go to Africa, you start seeing God as someone with a mean mask and a straw skirt, so you should think of maybe moving farther north, and maybe in Israel, you'll get a clearer image of your prophecy. Yes.
When you mentioned science, I was going to say that when you use the internet, you have scientific proof of something there because you're using it. What scientific proof do you have of all this metaphysics you're talking about?
Absolutely. By definition, Kabbalah.
Can you test it by science?
So, first of all, it's a different realm. Kabbalah is not supposed to be tested by science. And
how do you know it's real if it can't be tested?
a very good question. A very good question. The basic idea of Kabbalah is that it's Kabbalah, and that it's Kabbalah means something that we receive and believe in, and tradition. You know, I'll tell you, I was once at the Yanuka. Does anybody know who the Yanuka is? He's a Kabbalist, like he's a budding Kabbalist who's starting off, and somebody came to him and had things. He said, "Listen, Eliyahu Hanavi told me this and this and this and this." And then he said, wow, it's amazing. It's amazing. And then someone was sitting next to him and he said, well, why do you believe that this is Eliyahu Hanavi? And the Kabbalist answered, for the same reason that you don't believe for no reason at all, I believe for no reason at all. And I really like that answer. And there is, it's not going to be a proof, but this is the metaphysical outline that is brought down in our tradition. And again, it's not something, I mean, you can get a little bit of scientific proof. And that if you're going to take, let's say, 100,000 prophets, and you take them in Africa, and you take them in the United States, and then you do a study, and then you'll see that the prophecy in the United States and in Africa and in Israel is different. You can do a scientific study. At this stage, we don't have prophets, so you're at a loss to do the scientific study. But if you're asking, does it have any real life ramifications? The answer is sort of yes, and that it's not just an axiom that doesn't impact it. Now, Rav Kook is saying this regarding his own feelings, and he's saying that he realizes that when he comes to Eretz Yisrael, he said that the well springs of his imagination opened up. And it's brought down in the Talmud that a person who lives in Chutz La'aretz, when he comes to Eretz Yisrael, he doubles his capability, even doubling someone who was never there and came here. And that a person who was in Chutz La'aretz and then came to Eretz Yisrael gets doubled. Okay, so now this was a little background about Rav Kook's understanding of prophecy. And let's take a look at what he writes in the essay. So I'm in the third sentence of the third paragraph. In the following essay, he describes Ruach Hakodesh, its form during the exile. He sees it as an intrinsic quality of the Jewish people that remains a constant, even though it is relegated only to a few exceptionally talented individuals. Now, let me explain that sentence. And there's something really unusual about the Kuzari. If anybody ever read the Kuzari, it starts off like really fair. And he goes and he approaches a philosopher. And he says, well, you don't really have any mitzvahs. And then he goes to a Christian. And he says, well, you don't really, why should I believe you? And then he goes to a Muslim. And then he says, well, both the Christian and the Muslim are based on the Jew. I guess I have no choice. I'll go to the Jew. And he starts off. And then he goes to the Jew. And the Jew begins and he says, we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who gave prophecy to the Jewish people. And the reason and the proof why you should believe in God is because he created something totally different than the rest of mankind. We are a nation that has prophecy. And you read that and you say, well, what is he saying? What does that mean? Like today, it seems like very, like, you know, we don't really seem to have be a nation with prophecy. And he explains, first of all, by the way, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is arguing, he has a different opinion than the Rambam. The Rambam has an interesting letter regarding Muhammad. And he says, the reason why we don't believe that Muhammad was a prophet is not because theologically it's impossible. Theologically, that could be very possible. The reason why we think Muhammad was not a prophet is because he was simply not a prophet. And and it's interesting that he wrote that. I believe he wrote it in Arabic. It's in his letters, and that's in stark contrast to Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi says that there is no such thing. And this week, Parsha Bilam, he says, is an exception. Bilam is an exception, and from Bilam we learn, because he is such an exception, that prophecy belongs to the Jewish people, and that for a non-Jew to have prophecy is like a donkey being able to speak, and that it's the same kind of thing. It's like just a different level of revelation. This is according to Reb Yehuda Levi. So now Rabbi Kook is basing himself on this idea of Reb Yehuda Levi, and he's saying that the talent of the Jewish people, what we're special, what makes us special, like everybody says, well, we're the startup nation and we're smarter and we win Nobel Prizes. So if you would ask Rav Kook, he would say, well, we have the talent of prophecy. And again, the talent of prophecy, it's not an individual talent, but it's something that has to be national. When the Jewish people are all together in Eretz Yisrael, then we return to our stature and our spiritual nature. So let's see what he says. I'm at the last paragraph. The tshuva that is meant for Israel, the tshuva that will elevate their prominence and lead the way to total redemption, will arrive via the return of the power of Ruach Hakodesh, sweeping through the entire nation. Now, first of all, it's an interesting concept of tshuva. Like the Jewish people have to do tshuva, like we're sinning, where we don't have prophecy, and that everybody thought that he had problems because he missed a Ma'ariv. Now you have to add, well, it's not only you missed a Ma'ariv, you're not a prophet. Like, who are you? Like, God created you to be a prophet, and in the end, you're not a prophet. Now, again, he's not necessarily talking about every individual, but he's saying that the Jewish people have to do tshuva. And Rabbi Kook, in his book, Orota Tshuva, and throughout his writings, he has a really interesting, phenomenal new concept of tshuva. And as opposed to the usual tshuva of just getting down on yourself and just having a jubilee of guilt feelings, Rabbi Kook understands tshuva and its original word to return to your natural status. And he says the natural status of the Jewish people are to be a nation of prophets. And because we're supposed to be a nation of prophets, we are inevitably going to gravitate and return to that with the unfolding developmental process of the redemption. And that this is the tshuva of the Jewish people. Again, you have to be healthy, you have to be happy. Everybody, it says you need 4 things to be a prophet. You have to be wise, you have to be valorous, you have to be wealthy, and you have to be, which one did I say? Humble. And that if you're not all 4 of them, then you're not going to be a prophet. So the Jewish people have to return to all 4 of these traits in order to have prophets among them. So let's read the last sentence. Ruach HaKodesh is actually the unique prophetic talent in its premature state. So that's an important thing, because Rabbi Kook is explaining that Ruach HaKodesh and prophecy go together. Now, these concepts might seem out of the ballpark, but there's an interesting tshuva regarding Mokom HaMizbeach. Can you rebuild the temple? Can you not rebuild the temple? It's not something that is discussed. I would think that even today, it's discussed less than it was discussed 200 years ago. There was one of the students of Rabbi Akiva Eger, Tzvi Kalisher, was adamant about rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash. Let's just do it. Let's rebuild the Beis Hamikdash. And then he has responsa where he writes to Rabbi Akiva Eger, and Rabbi Akiva Eger says, well, we have a problem. And then he writes back and he answers, he rebuttals the problem. He says, well, this is solvable. This is solvable. And he says, well, I don't know. And then they get to everything except for shkalim. For some reason, he had a problem with shkalim, that they have to belong to everybody. You have to buy korbanot that belong to everybody. And like after he solved all of the difficult problems, he seemed to get stuck on that simple problem of how do you get public shkalim. And it looks like today you read the tshuva, you understand, like he had so many, like how do you find kohanim, how do you find tchelas, how do you find just everything. And then like he was able to find solutions for everything except for the shkalim. He said, well, a carbon pesach, everyone brings his own, and that we can do. And then he says, well, maybe we can bring a Korban Pesach. And he says, maybe it is an idea. I'll ask my son-in-law. So he had a son-in-law, the Chatam Sofer, and he respected the Chatam Sofer as someone that knew more than him. And he wrote a letter to the Chatam Sofer and saying, should we bring Karbanot? Should we go and bring Korban Pesach? And the Chatam Sofer was a little more, he was a little more practical. He was also a good friend of Franz Joseph. And like he knew in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and he understood a little more about politics. Rabbi Akiva Eger, on the other hand, once the guy in charge of the bathhouse passed away, and they were looking for someone to replace him, and he wanted to replace the person who was taking charge of the bathhouse. And then, like everybody in Pozna, made sure that he wouldn't get the job because it was beneath his dignity, even though he himself didn't know that. So Rabbi Akiva Eger was a very simple kind of person who just lived in Pozna and was not a worldly man. Whereas his son-in-law, the Chatam Sofer, was very well versed in international matters. So Rabbi Akiva Eger asks him, well, why don't we bring a Korban Pesach? And then the Chatam Sofer answers him, "Hayishmeelim makpidim me'od al oto makom," that the Arabs are not that availing of that place, and they care a lot, and they will not let you bring a Korban Pesach. So that it's not like an idea that let's just do this. But it's interesting to see, on one hand, the naivety of Rabbi Akiva Eger and the sophistication of the Chatam Sofer, and how it was discussed. Now, today, it's discussed, I think, a little less. And that, well, should we? Let's do it. How do we do it? And anyway, one of the things that you need in order to build the Beit HaMikdash is you need to recognize where is the Mizbeach. And the Rambam writes, Makom HaMizbeach mechuvan me'od. It has to be exact. And it's the exact place where first man was created, and where Noach brought a korban, and that's the place of the Akedah. And there was a constant tradition exactly where it was. But when the Jewish people went to Babylon, no one was alive that could point out the exact spot. This is the Mizbeach. And they needed to reinstate the Mizbeach, and they had 3 Nevi'im, Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, and they said, this is where the Mizbeach is. So some say they did it with prophecy. Some say they did remember, and that, I remember, it was right here. And that we knew the spot. Today, we don't have anybody who's still alive who's going to say that. And then we're going to have to rely on prophecy. So how do we build the Beit HaMikdash if we don't know where the Makom Mizbeach is? And for the Makom Mizbeach, we need prophecy. So here, Rabbi Kook has an interesting responsa. And also, he solves all of the different problems. And he says, even though we don't have prophecy today, we do have Ruach HaKodesh. And it's enough to have Ruach HaKodesh to know exactly where the Makom HaMizbeach is. You don't really need a full-fledged prophet. Any rabbi with Ruach HaKodesh can easily tell you, oh, well, the Makom HaMizbeach is right here. I can see it, smell it. It's obviously right here. And Rabbi Kook doesn't really talk about himself. He doesn't say that he's the person, but it seems from between the lines of what he's writing, he writes it like so nonchalantly. Well, yeah, but any rabbi with Ruach HaKodesh can do that. It seems like he himself was able to recognize the Makom HaMizbeach should he decide to do that. And this is regarding Ruach HaKodesh. Anyway, what Rabbi Kook is saying is that Ruach HaKodesh is a premature version of Nevuah. They're not two separate concepts. And it's not like Ruach HaKodesh is just inspiration and Nevuah is from God. No, it's like baby Nevuah is Ruach HaKodesh, and that there are different levels of Ruach HaKodesh. So that if we're going to study prophecy and we want to become prophets, so the first stage is studying the first stages of Ruach HaKodesh, and then to see how to slowly graduate from one stage to the next until we can become full-blown prophets. So let's go on. The more the pure-hearted Gedolim are able to wage war against the neglect and suppression of this lofty section of the Torah, the more the national revival will awaken. Now, this sounds very interesting, and I want to compare it with what the Hasidim predicate Chassidut on this sentence, and they have a sentence of the Baal Shem Tov that he once went up to heaven. I think it was the Heichal of the Mashiach, and he said, "Okay, what do? We want Mashiach now." And the Mashiach said, "Well, when everybody in Israel knows how to do what you do and know how to learn Chassidut like you learn it," but he said specifically, is able to have prophecy like you have prophecy, you're able to have aliyat neshama, which is one of the forms of Ruach Hakodesh, like you have an aliyat neshama, then the redemption will come. And that fits. And then it was interesting, and he said, "Oh, that's all." He writes in a letter. It's like one of the only authentic letters that we have from the Baal Shem Tov. Everything else is second and third hand. And there is a letter that he wrote, and he sent it, I think, to his brother-in-law, and it was intercepted, and it was revealed. He didn't expect it to be a public letter, and it's a phenomenal letter. And he writes that, "Oh, well, if that's all, I just have to teach everybody how to become prophets." That sounds like a very simple thing. And that he had a solution. It seems that it was predicated on meditating on the letters, but he wasn't allowed to reveal it. And they said, no, you're not allowed to reveal this. No. So he passed away without revealing it, even though his students, there are all kinds of hints and things among his students did practice aliyot neshama. It's very interesting that the Baal Shem Tov practiced aliyot neshama in a very major way. And we find all of his students and the Hasidim continuing to practice aliyot neshama, like prophetic skills, Ruach Hakodesh. It's very rampant in the Hasidic world. The Vilna Gaon also practiced aliyot neshama. And you don't accept that?
No, I'm saying, but he's in a different league.
I don't know. Well, I wouldn't say that out loud in 770, but I agree. But it's interesting that even though the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon both practiced aliyot neshama, the students of the Baal Shem Tov continued to practice aliyot neshama, and the students of the Vilna Gaon, there's nothing. It's like nothing. Like we don't have anything from Reb Chaim Volozhin, from Yitzchak Volozhin, from the Nitziv, from nothing. It's like gone. Now, Rav Tzvi Yehuda would always say, he would love to tell a story about Reb Chaim Volozhin, that there was a Reb Reuven who was invited to a wedding on Friday, and he didn't come, and it was a Friday, and everybody was worried, and they didn't want to start the wedding without him, and they asked him what to do, and he said, you should take the back axle of a carriage and ride to this place in a forest and try to help them get out. And then they took a back axle of the carriage and they rode to a certain place in the forest, and they found the carriage, and he was stuck because the back axle was broken, and he was able to get out of the forest, and he came to the wedding, and everybody at the wedding said, "Oh, Reb Chaim Volozhin, you have Ruach Hakodesh." And he said, "No, it was just a logical thing. Like, he said he was going to come. A person of that stature, if he said he's going to come, he's going to come. So obviously he started off, and what could have caused him not to get there? Obviously he broke a wheel, and if it was the front wheel, that's easier to fix than the back wheel. So obviously it must have been the back wheel. So the most logical thing to do would be to send a back axle to this place in the forest." And Rav Tzvi Yehuda used to tell this story how the Litvische rabbis, the students of the Vilna Gaon, also shared Ruach HaKodesh, but they purposely wanted to hide their talents from the masses and leave the public narrative and dialogue in the realm of real natural things, and not go off the deep end as the narrative in Hasidic in amongst the Hasidim. This is what Rav Kook is saying about the nature of prophecy. So let me summarize what it is that we saw here in Rav Kook. We saw an interesting thing. We saw that the Jewish people in the end of days are going to do tshuva. That's great. And what is the tshuva? The tshuva is that we're going to return to our stature of yore. What is our stature? Nevuah. And that we are going to return to become prophets. And that as we return to Eretz Yisrael, we are growing and our talent of having Ruach Hakodesh is increasing. And as our talent of Ruach Hakodesh is increasing, we're also going forward and getting baby Nevuah. And this will grow and become full-fledged Nevuah as we grow further. Okay, this was stage one. Are there questions up to here on stage one of Rav Kook? Okay, I hope you're away. Okay, so we're ready now for stage number two. So first of all, I'd like to begin by analyzing what are these stages of Ruach HaKodesh and the stages of prophecy. And let's try to analyze them one by one in a laboratory. You like laboratories.
Well, Ruach HaKodesh in general do for us? It would predict the Second World War and show us how to prevent it. What would it do for us?
Well, you know, it's really good if you're going to go to Las Vegas or at the Preakness. It can help, you know, like Lucky Strike is going to take by 3 rounds. You do a lot of things with Ruach HaKodesh. It's interesting. We see an interesting kind of interaction. The first interaction that Shaul HaMelech has with Shmuel HaNavi is he doesn't come and ask him to teach him the word of God. He says, I lost 2 donkeys. Where are they? And Shmuel says, they're already found. Now they're looking for you. And this is like within the giant machinations of establishing the kingdom of Israel, you get like a peek into what went on. And it really sounds very familiar to what goes on today in the homes of Kabbalists. And that people ask Kabbalists, should I buy? Should I sell? Where's the market going to go? Yes. And you know, can I read some? Can I read a text message that I got? I got a text message from somebody who thinks that I know the answer. Let's see if I can find it. It's a funny text message. He's like, here. This is a text message. Hey, question. The S&P is on a big bull run. The last 5 days, it sunk a bit. I have a quant algo trader who said his system showing it going even higher today and next couple of days. So I bought 100K of options that expire in the next week if it doesn't go up. Any chance you can take a look and see if it'll pop up a bit more? Great question, isn't it?
No, I'm interested in that.
I needed to hit at least 440 in the next couple of days. Not even such a large move, just up. Now, I don't understand why he asked me if I knew, and he didn't ask me if I could do anything about it. I mean, you know, like if I could know what the stock market is doing, I think I could probably also know, like change it and say, well, yes, I know it's not going up above 440, but of course I can change that. Just give me a second. And now I got it. I got it up to 445. So apparently, if you could do that, I think you could do that. But this is an example of things that people ask Kabbalists, and that this person, I'm sure, he was very disgruntled with my answer that I have no idea. And I'm sure he went and asked a Kabbalist. Now, I don't know. Maybe there are people who know the answer. Maybe they're not. I don't know.
Then all good capitalists should be very wealthy.
First of all, they are. They are like some of the wealthiest people in I think like number 2 and 3 wealthy people in Israel are Kabbalists. Yes, yes, they're just extremely wealthy.
Yes.
They're Kabbalists, yeah. Kabbalists are very wealthy. And and you don't even have to be a Kabbalist, you know. There's a guy who knows things.
Capital was filled with the halls with people studying, kept the stock market going.
So you should know, you don't have to be a Kabbalist for that. And there are people that have like really crazy intuition. There's a guy, Sushard. He's not a Kabbalist, he's not religious in any way, but he's very talented and he has intuition. He knows things. And they asked him, well, why don't you just go to Las Vegas if you have these superpowers? And he said, I do. And he wins. And there are people like that. There are a few people that are known that they're banned from casinos because they have good luck. I don't know what they explain, but they say, look, you just can't come to the casino anymore. And there are a few people that in the world that are known like that they are not allowed in casinos.
But not Jews.
I don't know. Sushard is a Jew. I don't know. He's probably still allowed until he like breaks a casino, and then they'll say, no, you can't come either. But anyway, what?
Not kosher.
Oh, to go into the casinos. I think I'll tell you, I don't want to go into that, but I think casinos have a terrible rap, and that everybody hates casinos, and they're like together with serial killers and pedophiles, rapists, and people who go to casino. Halachically, if you put the money on the table, like before you go in, then it's okay, unless you don't have a profession. It's the only thing if you're a professional gambler, then that's like bad. But also, it's not like in the really bad list. You're just not allowed to be, you're not allowed to testify. It's like eating in public.
But the original casinos were established by the mafia, so that's why they has a bad rap. But on Christmas Day in Atlantic City, who's in the casino? Jews and Chinese.
Anyway, I don't want to go into that, but the casinos have a much worse, I don't know, PR than their proper place. Again, I'm not in favor of casinos, but they're not on the super duper blacklist. But anyway, yes. So let me explain. When I want to talk about the entire gamut of Ruach Hakodesh, and that it's true, people with inspiration, and that there are people who know, like fortune tellers. I'm sorry if I'm going to sound primitive, but I actually believe in fortune tellers. And again, I don't believe that every fortune teller is really a fortune teller. It could be that 90% of them are crazy people. But I do believe that there are 10%, or it could be that 10% of the 90%, that means like within the 90% also, they have 10% intuition and they know things. And I do believe that there is a power. Now, this is a power, for instance, of intuition that, first of all, I'm not sure if it's a secular power or if it is a power that is given to them by bad energy, by like, I don't know, the dark side, and that there is such a thing as being able to receive information from a negative source. There is such a thing. And it could be also that it's not negative, it's not positive. It's just like people are intuitive, and that I know someone who's just very intuitive. I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know, I don't want to say that it's not from anything bad, but I have a student, I hurt my head. And she said, I was on a Zoom, she was in England and I was here, and I said, I hurt my head. I said, oh, wow, I feel this pain right here on this side. And I don't think she was lying or, trying to pull one over on me, but I'm sure that she was so empathetic that she actually felt my pain, and she knew that it was on the right side of my head, exactly where it was. And that there are people who have intuition, and that it's I think, a natural human thing that can be expanded. Above that, there is Ruach HaKodesh, which is interfaced with God. And I want to go into a little more detail of seeing, well, what are these lower levels? The lower levels, I think everybody's going to be with me in the lower levels and will understand what they are. So now let's flip to the front of the book. And the Rambam has levels of Ruach HaKodesh. And he actually, in Moreh Nevuchim, he has 11 different levels. He starts with the lowest level of Ruach HaKodesh, and he goes to the highest level of prophecy. So now, if you go to page 14, actually, I like the introduction. I'm going to read from the beginning of page 14, all right? Ruach HaKodesh, the gateway to prophecy. The concept of Ruach HaKodesh is often misconceived and relegated to one specific area of psychic clairvoyance. While this is indeed one type of Ruach HaKodesh, we will see that this is one of many. Usually, when we read the verse, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David, we envision David playing a harp and singing psalms. The Rambam, however, expands the concept of Ruach HaKodesh so broadly that he includes killing bears. The gift of Ruach HaKodesh actually has many different levels and appears in many forms. The lowest level of Ruach HaKodesh is even a bit surprising. It's what we commonly refer to as inspiration. The Rambam says that when a person is encouraged to act for good of an individual or community, he is actually experiencing a low level of Ruach HaKodesh. Now, the entry level of Ruach HaKodesh that we're about to see, everyone experiences. So that means that we all have level number one of Ruach HaKodesh that we can relate to, and that everybody realizes that he has an inspiration and he's inspired to do something, and that if you try to scientifically analyze where is this inspiration coming from, he's not going to come to find Greek muses inside of his brain. He's not going to find a Cupid shooting arrows. He doesn't know. It's something that's beyond the realm of science where inspiration is sourced. Now, let's take a look at level number one and see how we relate to it. Level one, the Rambam, in his book Guide to the Perplexed, delineates 11 levels of Ruach HaKodesh. After this introduction explanation, these are the words of the Rambam. I will begin to enumerate the degrees of prophecy to which I have referred above. The first degree of prophecy consists in the divine assistance which is given to a person and includes and encourages him to do something good and grand, to deliver a congregation of good men from the hands of the evildoers, to save one noble person, or to bring happiness to a large number of people. He discovers in himself the motivating factor that moves him and urges him to perform this deed. Yeah.
But this is still limited to Jews only, or this definition is.
The Rambam doesn't limit it. The Rambam has a different vantage point, and the Rambam sees it relating to anybody. And that my daughter once did something foolish. She was in Georgia. She went alone hiking in Georgia, and the trail kind of ended, and she just started going down and down. And then she got to a place where she couldn't go back up and she couldn't go back down, and she was stuck on a tree. And then nobody was around. And then a wood chopper, a Georgian wood chopper, came and saw her hanging on a tree in the middle of this nowhere, and somehow managed to save her life and get her off the tree and onto some place where they could walk. And the inspiration of this human being in Georgia to save my daughter is a level of Ruach HaKodesh. Yes.
I'll tell you a funny
Yes,
story.
it's not a funny story, it's a true story. We were hiking in the United States, I'm not exactly sure which forest, or the big forest. We were following the trails up and up and up and up, and then we decided it was time to go back. We didn't know which path to follow. All of a sudden, a man appeared and said, "Follow me."
It's a true story.
We followed him out, perfectly well out. He disappeared. We could never find him again.
Right.
We always said he was our Eliyahu Hanavi.
It's like the story of Yosef.
Hey, can I share a story? I was once on a Friday, I went to the Dead Sea with my Jeep, and I got stuck in the mud, and I tried to get out. And as I got out, I got more stuck in the mud until I was like 1 inch away from the Dead Sea, stuck in the mud. And there was like a 50-meter mud pile all the way, like a Jeep couldn't even get anywhere near to save me. And I was with a student, and I said, it's all right, we'll be saved. and I didn't know how we were going to be saved. I went up to the Tzomet, the intersection, and there, as soon as I got there, there was a Jeep, and the Jeep said yes, and he had two 25-meter long cables. Now, a Jeep to have one cable is rare. To have two, and he's probably the only Jeep in Israel that has like two. And he came, and it exactly fit. It was like exactly. It was so exact that the cable couldn't even go on the ground. We had to lift it up so it would be exactly 50 meters. Like, so it would be able to pull my Jeep. He pulled my Jeep out. We got back before Shabbat. And this guy was the manager of HP in Israel. And I always think like, well, Elionovi, he can disguise himself as the manager of HP in Israel. No, he can have like all kinds of different aliases. And at any rate, the inspiration of this person, the manager of HP, to stop whatever he was doing and to save me, this is an inspiration of Ruach HaKodesh. So till here, we found, I told him when he saved me, I said, that's it. I'm always going to buy HP computers. Now that I think about it, this was like 30 years ago. Now I think about it, I think I lied to him because like I'm in love with Apple. But anyway, I want to stop at stage number one and just realize stage number one. And it's good to start at stage number because it's something that we all share. Anytime that we have an inspiration to do something to help someone, cross a little old lady across the street, that is Ruach HaKodesh. That's the first level of Ruach HaKodesh. And that this inspiration that we're inspired to help others, this is actually a gift from heaven that is given to us by Hashem. Are there any questions? You people are great. What, no questions? Okay.
Once again, doesn't have to be just in Israel, in anywhere.
Right, the first level of Ruach HaKodesh, right? It's a very simple level, and we're going to see that the second and third levels of Ruach HaKodesh are also everywhere. I think it's only when you get into like really full-fledged prophecy that it has to be, and even that, once you get it in Israel, you can continue having it outside of Israel. Yeah.
So I guess I'm thinking of Ruach HaKodesh, and this is incorrect, this one you just said, as being something sort of out of the ordinary, kind of like Kook versus Mishpat. Helping somebody cross the street doesn't seem so out of the ordinary. It seems like something logical, like a Mishpat. You know, this is something we should do in society. Whereas Ruach HaKodesh, I tend to think of as beyond most comprehension.
Can I conclude with a story about I went to Rav Dov Kook. Do you know who Rav Dov Kook is? He's somebody who has like crazy Ruach HaKodesh. And he doesn't really realize that he has Ruach HaKodesh. And I asked him, is it true that you took a helicopter the day before the tragedy in Meron and you circled the mountain of Meron 7 times to pray? And he looked at me and he said, well, of course, you know, I saw the black cloud. And I tried to, dent the black cloud and get rid of it. I couldn't. I went again and again and again. I was praying. I couldn't do anything. I left exactly. I couldn't get, and he talked to me like it was the most normal thing. Of course. Well, what would you do? Of course. Yeah, right. Yeah, black cloud. Of course. You have to get the helicopter and take the black cloud. Yeah, of course. And someone who experiences Ruach HaKodesh doesn't know that he's experiencing Ruach HaKodesh. The same thing when you have a natural tendency to help someone, you're not aware that this natural tendency to help someone is endowed by God. And that if you analyze it and look for the source of your desire to help, you'll actually come to a heightened connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And why are you there in the first place? What to help this other person?
Why are you there? Well, you were just standing, and then this little old lady says help, and then you cross. Oh, so you're saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you there?
No.
We put that old lady there in the first place. What's my first? Old lady gonna stay at home.
Well, it says that there will always be impoverished people in Israel, and the reason for the impoverished people are so that people will always be able to give, and that we'll never have a situation where you won't be able to give.
Well,
So-
that's the classic story of the little old lady who says, I don't want to be right. Leave me alone.
So we're going to stop at this point, and next week we'll continue with higher levels as we take off. Be well.
You get to keep them, yeah.
I suggest bringing them to the next lecture, yeah, because we're probably going to access the next levels from the